He has achieved success that has lived well, laughed often, and loved much, who has gained the respect of others, the trust of people, and the adoration of little children, who has left this world better than he found it, and never lacked appreciation for the earth's beauty and life's explorations, or failed to express it, who has always looked for the best in others and given the best he had, whose entire life was an inspiration, whose lasting memory is a benediction. Welcome. My name is Valerie Zidell Stack, and I am incredibly honored to be the Dignity Memorial celebrant today as we mourn the passing of Larry Andrew Calcagno, but so much more importantly, to remember everything precious and dear that he was to you. Larry's children have given me the honor of guiding their remembrance of Larry today. For those of you who are here with us virtually or in spirit, thank you so much for being here alongside them at this very difficult hour from afar. Let us begin our service with an opening prayer in thanksgiving for Larry's life on earth, read by Larry's son-in-law, Mark.
Loving God, we give you thanks for the gift of life, the gift of family, the gift of friendship. We especially give you thanks for the gift of Larry's life as a husband, a father, a grandfather, brother, and friend. We also thank you for the great love he showed to his family and others, and for his generous and playful spirit. Because of our faith, we know life does not end, but it is changed, and that we will be reunited with Larry. We ask that you bless all of us that mourn his passing, and bless his family and friends at this time as we honor and give tribute to his life. Amen.
A little boy named Andro Lorenzo, who was called Larry, was born in the promise of early springtime on March 23rd, 1939, in Portland, Oregon, to Giovanna and Joe Calcagno. He was their sixth child, the baby of the family, and spoiled rotten as the littlest. He was welcomed by two sisters, Clara and Enos, and three brothers, Joe, John, and Nick. Larry was raised by his father, older siblings, and family friends, the Rottos. Larry always said, a lot of people helped raise him, and Larry always had a special place in his heart for all of them. He was blessed to be surrounded by a community of Italians, which was a special nod to his heritage. Larry grew up in a farming family which was their livelihood. They grew vegetables and sold their produce on their truck wholesale. They lived off the land for their daily sustenance, raising chickens for eggs and meat, and cows for milk and beef. Larry was assigned to milking the cows. Most of the family's time was spent working on the land, each one making their own individual contribution to farm life. When Larry was 9 years old, his family's open farmers market store in North Portland was destroyed when the Vanport flood hit the area on Memorial Day weekend. Larry always told the story about how he watched the flood come in and obliterate the area, and all he could think of was, "My bike is at the store, and there's no way to get to it to save it." From his earliest beginnings, hunting and fishing were major family pastimes. Larry had a good and happy childhood, growing up in the same house on Elwood Road. Larry attended Whitaker Grade School in Portland. In 8th grade, he met Bob Hensey, and they remained lifelong friends. Larry always said that he saved Bob from a life of crime by becoming his friend. Gail said, "I never once heard Uncle Bob contest that statement." Larry was not inclined toward academics. Instead, his favorite subject was PE because he loved sports and was a natural athlete. At Park Rose High School, Larry was a star athlete. He won the Oregon State Championship in wrestling for his weight at 141 pounds. He also played football for Park Rose, and when the season was done, he was selected to play in the Shriners game, where the top players from various schools were chosen to compete at a higher level. Larry got his name in the newspaper for his stellar performance against a state team with the caption, "Little Larry played a big part in Metro history." The article said that little Larry was a big man that night and a defensive demon for the Metros. Larry was very well liked and social. He held leadership positions as president of the Letterman's Club and served as vice president of his senior class. He also had the pleasure of crowning the homecoming queen. However, Larry's greatest joy in high school was meeting the love of his life, Sharon Niemeyer. He went on to attend the University of Oregon on a football scholarship. Larry, being short in stature, was not in the starting lineup, but he definitely made an impression because the coaches thought he was fast. Larry said he had many memories of college pranks, but that the academics and football training was hard. He also greatly missed Sharon, and Sharon missed him. So they wrote each other love letters while he was away. The letters were saved and kept in a glass jar with a metal lid that Gail remembers reading as a child up in the attic. Jim now has their love letters in his possession as a precious family sentimental heirloom. Larry quit college and got a job working on the railroad. 2 reasons drove his decision. He ran out of money, and his dad also told him he would not be paying for Larry to stay down in Eugene to flirt with the girls. But what was the most compelling reason is that Larry already had his true love, Sharon, waiting for him at home. Larry proposed to Sharon in her second-floor apartment, and when Sharon said yes, he was so excited that he jumped over the balcony, railing, falling 2 stories, and ended up in the bushes. Larry married his high school sweetheart and great love on September 24th, 1960, at Mount Tabor Presbyterian Church. Sharon borrowed a stunning wedding gown from her sister-in-law, Marilyn, and they had a simple reception with cake and coffee. The newlyweds moved across the street from his childhood home to start his life as a married man in a little blue house that he told Sharon was only temporary until they could afford something bigger. Larry then began working on Columbia Boulevard at Ramco, a company that manufactured baseboard heaters. Larry and Sharon didn't hesitate to start a family. Kathy came first, followed by Gail 2 years later. This little family was happy to be surrounded by their Calcagno relatives, many of who were neighbors, and seeing the Niemeyer relatives on a regular basis, including Darlene, Sharon's sister, who, as fate would have it, married Larry's best friend, Bob Hensey, a short time after Larry and Sharon tied the knot. The perfect combination, 2 sisters marrying 2 childhood best friends. These 4 became an inseparable foursome. They enjoyed snowmobiling occasions to Mount Hood and Eastern Oregon, playing cards and clamming at the coast. Larry continued to work at Ramco for 10 years and farmed on the side. In addition to snowmobiling and playing cards, he spent his spare time continuing to hunt and fish on the Columbia River for salmon and sturgeon, and in the high lakes for trout, places like Gold Lake and Davis Lake. Water skiing also became a family adventure, pulling his family on his modest 16-foot runabout fishing boat with a measly 4-cylinder engine. But it was good enough. Everyone always had a good time learning to water ski. Larry himself made quite the impression with his beach start and signature smooth turns. Kathy shared how Larry would love to get people wet, splashing close to them or relishing in pushing people into the water, especially the girls, referring to his constant playful and mischievous spirit. One day, to everyone's surprise, including Larry and Sharon, 10 years after Gail was born, along came baby Jimmy, Lawrence James. Larry was elated to finally get his boy. The day arrived 20 years later when they were able to leave the blue house on Elwood Road. Larry finally made good on his promise because the Portland airport bought them out, and he was able to build Sharon her dream house in Gresham, Oregon. Sharon's brother offered Larry an opportunity to buy a dump truck and work with him at Rivergate Rock. Larry continued to own and drive his Mack dump truck that he named the Italian Stallion, that he operated out of his home under his business title, Larry Calcagno Trucking, until he retired around the age of 65. Family was easily Larry's truest passion in life, and he worked tirelessly to provide for them. Larry drove that same 1971 Mack dump truck all his life until the day he retired. Larry's children all said that throughout their lives, the love between their parents was evident, and they were a wonderful match. Sharon was attracted to Larry's stability and honesty, family values, and how handsome he was. They were described as a couple that were really devoted to each other, both with a romantic spirit. At some point, Larry decided to give Sharon red roses on their anniversary, adding one more rose for every new year of marriage. Perhaps a different color, a white one, to signify another successful year of married life. Kathy recalled that when she and Gail were young, their parents included them to join them on their anniversary dinner at Key Restaurant in Vancouver on the Columbia River. Their anniversary celebration became a family tradition. Other family traditions involved family dinners. They were an important ritual to Larry and Sharon to gather at the end of the day with their children to connect with one another. The big Calcagno 4th of July picnics throughout the years still continue, where Larry clearly instigated a lot of the games. New Year's Eve at the cabin in the Blue Mountains in Wallowa Whitman National Forest in Washington, snowboarding to ring in the new year. Camp Lamolo Lake, every year with the Moyers and others, was always a special time. Larry was always generous with his time, his humor, his money, and his ice cream. Larry was described as a completely fun dad. He was always connected to the younger generation. He had a youthful, lively spirit and made amusing, memorable things happen with his children, nieces, and nephews. Larry's favorite fatherly saying or words of advice: finish your food. Kids are starving in Russia. Over time, with the children grown and married, Larry was blessed with 2 son-in-laws in Mark and Pete, and a daughter-in-law, Sherry. They all considered him a great father-in-law. Larry had a part in matchmaking Kathy with Mark. Mark recalled when Larry first invited him to go fishing, and never having been on a boat before, shortly after launching, the boat started filling up with water. Mark asked Larry, "Is this normal?" It turned out that Larry forgot to put the plug into the boat. Pete remembered it was always so worth it waking up at 4 a.m. to go fishing with him. Sherry and Jimmy lived with Larry for a long time and had a close and intimate relationship because of that, sharing the raising of their children and daily life with him. And then the gift of grandchildren arrived: Stephen, Katie, Ben, Luca, Kelsey, Brittany, and Dominic, and 1 great-grandchild, Joanna, each with their own distinct memories. 12 years ago, in 2008, Larry endured every spouse's greatest heartache in the loss of his wife, Sharon. Her death was unexpected, with a virus that attacked her heart and took her life 3 months later. They shared 48 long, beautiful years together. The loss of his beloved was deeply painful for Larry, but he marched forward, holding her essence close with dignity and grace. Larry was a family man through and through, who made a deep impression. Even in grief, he stayed engaged with family. At this time, I now invite Pete and Katie to come forward to read the tributes written by family and friends.
From niece Marianne, the one memory that connects all of my memories and feelings is the twinkle in Uncle Larry's eyes. I will always hold Uncle Larry's mischievous eyes in my heart.
From cousin Patty Garbarino, every time I catch a glimpse of the Columbia or see someone water skiing, I think of our dear cousin Larry. Being thrown in the water by him was actually a pleasure and a privilege. If Larry played a trick on you, you knew you were loved. My most significant memory of Larry is the love and devotion he had for his family, especially Sharon. No 2 people knew or enjoyed a greater love story than those 2. Larry will be sadly missed, but will never, ever be forgotten, and only happiness will come from the thought of him.
From great niece Ruth, Uncle Larry had so much love for all of us. He had a way of making me feel important to him, even though I was just a great niece in a big family. If I was outside when he drove by my house, he would create a time to swing in and chat with me for an hour or so out in the yard, talking about anything and everything. There are many, many memories I will remember with them and him and his smile every time.
From niece Judy, I have many favorite memories of Uncle Larry. He was definitely the fun uncle.
From cousin Joey Calcagno, there was never a dull moment on outings with Uncle Larry. Something would always go wrong and would end up in another story about one of our adventures, only to be retold and enhanced as time went on. Growing up on Elrod Road, he was more like a big brother to me than an uncle. He was a family legend, and I mean that in a good way.
From cousin Nancy Murata, Larry always made me feel special. I loved our time spent in Portland each summer. We enjoyed the outdoors, delicious food, and loud laughter. I cherish these memories. Larry had the best laugh. It was big, deep, and constant. I'll always remember Larry with love and affection.
From nephew Bob Vernazza, I have so many wonderful memories of Uncle Larry. He was a big influence on me and taught me all about hunting and fishing in Oregon. He was always fun to be with and will be greatly missed.
From Cocoletto cousin Antonella, Larry had a sweet smile. I remember him with pleasure. Sending a hug from the whole Cocoletto family.
From his niece, Nikki, Uncle Larry genuinely cared for and was devoted to all of us. He was generous and inclusive with all that he had in all that he did. He was our dashing, daring youngest uncle that was a supportive coach, a fun friend, the ultimate gamer, a gifted athlete, an avid outdoorsman, our protector, and on top of all of this, he was handsome enough to be a movie star. He brought the light and the spark to all events, whether it was riding his motorcycle on our Elrod Road bicycle parade, teaching us to water ski, drive, or play chess, leading us in a game of croquet or kick the can, throwing us into the swimming pool, or laying down the biggest fish challenge. The one who catches the biggest fish gets treated to a milkshake. Uncle Larry, your love is our joy, and we will hold on to it forever.
From nephew Howard, I am at a loss for words for an uncle that I have spent thousands of hours with fishing, hunting, and vacationing, and just being a best friend. I have enough stories in those adventures to last me 2 lifetimes.
From Ray, Jimmy's best friend. Anytime I think of Larry, from the time I was young, I smiled. Even mourning his loss now, I'm smiling thinking about him. My life was exponentially changed for the better for knowing him. He has been one of the most influential people in my life, just by being him. I am forever grateful, and he will be forever missed.
From nephew Joe Hotsteller, Larry is one of the best storytellers I've ever known. He had a talent of stretching the stories so it was fun, interesting, and entertaining. I always had a hard time telling which lines were true and which were all Larry, but I always wanted to hear the next one.
From cousin Jeannie, Larry was only 6 years older than me. He was the closest in age of all of my cousins, closest thing to a brother I ever had. His kindness to my dad, his Uncle Gigi, will never be forgotten. Larry and Sharon used to stop by and play pinochle for hours. Dad really appreciated those visits.
From niece Anita, he made me feel important as a kid, and something very special was when he taught me to drive his Willys Jeep in low gear all the way around the cucumber patch, so he could pick up the boxes at the end of the rows. I will always remember his happy heart.
From nephew Johnny, Uncle Larry was a one-of-a-kind guy, a guy who you couldn't be around without feeling lighter, entertained, and just drawn in.
From cousin Janetti Murata, throughout all my summers in Portland, the time with Larry was my most special memory. He taught me how to ski with a rope between my legs and my foot in the handle, do a beach start and a full turn, almost. It was his fun-loving nature, the way he was so invested in teaching me, his enthusiasm for the sport, and his overall love for life that made every time I fell on my face or bruised my leg a small price to pay. For I got to spend this special time with Larry. How lucky was I? My dream was to become a professional water skier someday, perhaps to keep those memories of Larry alive as long as possible. With a big heart, what a jolly soul, what a loving husband, father, grandfather, son, brother, uncle, cousin, friend. We are all blessed. Your dad came into our lives.
From great niece Amber, Uncle Larry had the best sense of humor and was very personable. It made you want to sit down and be in his company. When we would go snowmobiling, I always wanted to ride with him because there was no rut he couldn't get out of if it came down to it. He was strong enough to lift both ends of the snowmobile. But at the same time, he was pretty wild at driving, so it was always a thrill. I will continue to remember Uncle Larry not only through memories, but through several stories that I have been told by my father. There is no doubt he was extraordinary, kind, humorous, humble, and tough as hell.
From grandson Luca, some of my best times as grandpa was fishing at the trout farm. Even though he was more for catching the bigger fish, he made sure I had fun getting the easy catches. From daughter Gail, my dad taught so many people so many things. One of the things he taught me was if you don't know or can't remember the whole story, just fill in the missing details with something interesting, because everybody loves a good story. So that is what I'm going to do. When I was in high school, a friend of mine went to Japan on an educational student trip. When she returned, she frequently added san to the end of names. Gail-san, teacher-san. She said it indicated you respected and honored the person. I liked it and started calling Dad Papa-san and continued to do so for the rest of his life. But more importantly, he taught me love. He taught me this by how he lived his life. Papa-san, your love will live on in all of us forever.
From daughter Kathy. In the last couple of years, when Gail and I would say, "Love you, Dad," he would always say, "I know." I think that says it all, except for, "I'll miss you, Dad." I think he'll probably would say, "I know."
From son Jim, standing in the shadow of greatness. I once read that a great man will draw a circle round him and his family. A great man will draw a bigger circle to include his friends and loved ones. I thought to myself that I would never, ever find the edge of my dad's circle. Even to this day, those edges have not been seen. For the size of that circle that my dad has casted out is beyond any I have ever seen. If one was to measure wealth and love, kindness, he would be one of the wealthiest men that I know. He had plenty to share as he passed it out like candy in the form of ice cream to all that he encountered. I will greatly miss him, his loving son.
Thank you, Katie and Pete. Let us now pause to enjoy a memory slideshow of Larry Calcagno's remarkable life and a walk down memory lane. Larry Andrew Calcagno departed from this world on August 12th, 2020, at Legacy Mount Hood Hospital at the age of 81. Kathy and Gail were at his side. As our service comes to a close, let us listen to these gospel passages that speak to God's promise of heaven for those who believe. From the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3. God has made everything beautiful in its time. He also has put eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I only know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, and that every man should celebrate and enjoy the good of his labor. This is the gift of God. From John, chapter 11. Jesus said, "Your brother will rise again, for I am the resurrection and the life. Because the one who believes in me will live, even though he dies, and I will raise him up on the last day." In the words of Larry's family, Larry will be remembered as a dad that had a tender heart and a beautiful smile. He was a man full of adventure and always for a good time. Family came first, and he loved us all. Larry considered his family his richest inheritance, not the things that money can buy in life. He was filled with energy and taught us to work hard and play hard, to achieve life balance through his example. And one final thing, he loved to bet anyone a milkshake. Mark will now lead us in the closing prayer for Larry's transcendence to eternal life.
God of grieving hearts, you have blessed our lives by giving us Larry to love. We give over to you today the care of his spirit, and we ask that you grant him peace for all eternity. God, from whom we come and unto whom our spirits return, you have been our dwelling place for all generations. Lift our eyes beyond the shadows of earth and help us to see life in the light of the eternal. We rejoice that Larry has now been returned to your loving care as surely as you have promised. Amen.
Our closing song, chosen by his children, will be Dancing with Angels by Monk and Nagel. This concludes our service. Larry will be laid to rest immediately following the service at Lincoln Memorial Cemetery, where he will be brought to rest with his beloved wife, Sharon. Please go in love and peace this day, remembering your lively Italian with a deep sense of adventure and fun, but mostly your hard-working, devoted family man that was Larry Andrew Calcagno. Our funeral director now has a few closing words.
Thank you, Valerie. We're going to join in procession into the cemetery. I'm going to take a few minutes to very carefully take the urn and the flower piece and place them in my coach. The coach is just on the other side of the doors here, so in probably